What if the United States wanted to ban Bitcoin? Many people in the crypto community laugh at this notion, but today we're going to be taking a look at whether or not a Bitcoin ban is possible in the United States and how that could affect you. Welcome to part 2 of my War on Bitcoin series. If you would like to check out part 1, make sure you click the link above. And if you like Bitcoin or you love Bitcoin, make sure to smash the like on this video and also subscribe to the channel so more people will get to understand the message of Bitcoin. So, without further ado, here's part 2 of the War on Bitcoin. Die-hard cryptocurrency enthusiasts laugh at the notion that Bitcoin could be banned. But is it really that far-fetched? We're going to take a look at that question today to determine whether or not a Bitcoin ban is possible in the United States. Bitcoin is permissionless. This means that anyone with a computer can send or receive value with Bitcoin. While most people consider this to be Bitcoin's biggest strength, this quality makes Bitcoin a target by those who seek to control the lives of others, such as national governments. The uncontrollable nature of Bitcoin makes it very exciting to citizens, but terrifying to governments. Traditionally, when governments are threatened, they turn to both regulation and legislation. They make it more difficult for businesses to produce a good or service through regulation. They place strict guidelines on businesses that allow only the biggest players and companies to compete. Some government licenses to create products or services in the U.S. cost up to 7 figures. That's right, a company must pay the U.S. government over $1 million just for the right to be able to produce a certain good or service. This prevents small companies and startups from competing, while they allow the biggest companies to line the pockets of regulators through donations and backdoor deals. If regulation does not work, governments turn to legislation, which simply means creating laws to stop or limit something. Smoking is a great example of this. From the 1950s to the 1990s, smoking was allowed virtually everywhere. Restaurants, stadiums, and theme parks all had at least one smoking section. In the early 2000s, smoking bans began across the country, and the number of places where someone could smoke drastically dwindled. Now, smoking is even banned in most open-air parks. In many states, people cannot even smoke in their own private vehicle if a minor is present. The tricky thing about Bitcoin, to both regulators and legislators alike, is that you cannot ban Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin is simply an open-sourced computer code. This would be like banning computer programming. Recently, Congressman Brad Sherman called for a ban on Bitcoin and was basically laughed out of the building by both people in and out of the crypto community.
I look for colleagues to join with me in introducing a bill to outlaw cryptocurrency purchases by Americans so that we nip this in the bud, in part because not an awful lot of our international power comes from the fact that the dollar is the standard unit of international finance and transactions. Clearing through the New York Fed is critical for major oil and other transactions. And it is the announced purpose of the supporters of cryptocurrency to take that power away from us, to put us in a position where the most significant sanctions we have on Iran, for example, would become irrelevant. So whether it is to disempower our foreign policy, our tax collection enforcement, or our traditional law enforcement, the purposes of cryptocurrency, the advantage it has over sovereign currency is solely to aid in the disempowerment of the United States and the rule of law.
While Sherman attempted to explain why Bitcoin should be banned, his comments actually served as a billboard for why we need Bitcoin. More recently, during a hearing on Capitol Hill about cryptocurrency regulation, Senator Mike Crapo from Idaho offered his thoughts on a Bitcoin ban. If the United States were to decide, and I'm not saying that it should, if the United States were to decide we don't want cryptocurrency to happen in the United States and tried to ban it, I'm pretty confident we couldn't succeed in doing that because this is a global innovation. Senator Crapo is also the Senate Banking Committee chairman. There is little doubt that Mr. Crapo has a flurry of banking lobbyists constantly in his ear. Even with this pressure, he still admits that banning Bitcoin is near impossible. So this is great news, right? Bitcoin can't be banned. Let's all pack up and go home. We won. If it were only that simple. Bitcoin has been said to be capable of the most peaceful revolution in history. While it may be peaceful, this does not mean the governments of the world will go down without a fight. While Bitcoin itself cannot be banned due to the fact it is just a computer code, the government definitely has other means to attack Bitcoin if it chooses to do so. And if the government chooses any of these routes, it will be up to the citizens of that country to rebel. The government will have two attack points to target citizens using Bitcoin to create a workaround for a Bitcoin ban. Before we explain the two ways that a Bitcoin ban workaround could be enforced, we need to take a look at the narratives the government will use as justification for attacking citizens using Bitcoin. There are three justifications the government will push. The first is that Bitcoin will weaken the United States. While the United States is significantly the largest economy in the world, the true power of the U.S. lies in the fact that the U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. Imagine if you lived in Mexico but wanted to send money to the UK. The UK does not have a huge amount of Mexican pesos to handle many large peso to British pound transfers. So what happens is that the Mexican peso is converted to USD before it is transferred. Then, once it arrives in the UK, the US dollars are converted into British pounds. This means every country in the world needs to have US dollars on hand to allow for currency conversions. Bitcoin has the opportunity to replace the US dollar because there never is any physical money that needs to change hands. It is much easier for a digital currency to be the world's reserve currency rather than physical fiat. If Bitcoin were to be the replacement of the dollar, then this would create major financial issues for the United States. We would not have the type of purchasing power that we have now. This lies at the heart of Bitcoin tweets by U.S. President Donald Trump earlier this year. This shows that the U.S. government is already weighing this out. The second narrative you will hear regarding Bitcoin is that it is bad for the environment due to its proof of work consensus algorithm. The way the Bitcoin network comes to consensus is through Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining basically consists of computers constantly working at solving complicated math problems in order to create new circulating Bitcoin and to verify transactions. These computers use a large amount of electricity in order to mine. Along with a huge amount of electricity that large mining facilities need to operate, they also produce high amounts of heat and noise. In today's eco-friendly environment, there is a push to stop people from mining Bitcoin. Other cryptocurrencies have created new types of algorithms to get around this issue, but none have been nearly as successful as Bitcoin. This makes the proof of work algorithm the most successful in the world, as it also adds more security to a network than other algorithms. It does not look like Bitcoin will be changing algorithms anytime soon, if ever. With all of the power mining consumes and all of the heat and noise that mining produces, legislators will talk about the dangers Bitcoin mining imposes on the environment. Most of the reported effects of Bitcoin on the environment are totally overblown and in many cases flat out wrong, but I will save that for another video. The third narrative the government will give us in order to attack citizens using Bitcoin is that it is mainly used for the most nefarious of activities, including human trafficking, drug smuggling, and terrorism. At a recent Senate hearing on human trafficking, a trusted expert witness implored the Senate to regulate crypto mining. David Murray is the vice president of the Financial Integrity Network, which advises the government and large institutions on fighting money laundering. However, the mining regulation he is advising the government to use would effectively be a ban on cryptocurrency. It would force businesses to only use permissioned blockchains. This would require every miner to get permission from the government to mine, which most likely would come in the form of an expensive license. This would also allow the U.S. government to have access to any Bitcoin mining operation at any time. The lack of system-wide financial crimes compliance governance for some existing cryptocurrencies allows criminals space to operate and makes it difficult for the United States to isolate rogue service providers from the U.S. financial system. He went on to say, the trend towards decentralized and autonomous systems threatens our ability to control access to the U.S. financial system. Once again, it boils down to control. This government advisor, who has affected legislation before, believes that the permissionless nature of Bitcoin is exactly what makes it dangerous. He argued this makes it ripe for criminal activity, an argument we've heard ever since the creation of the Silk Road website. However, a blockchain research company, Chainalysis, has shown that today less than 1% of all Bitcoin transactions are for criminal activity. Should we ban the internet because people do illegal things on it? Why stop there? Let's ban roads because people drive on them under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Let's ban sports because people illegally bet on them. This shows the ridiculousness of this argument. So now that we understand the narratives we will be given to support a Bitcoin ban, let's look at the two attack points. The first is Bitcoin mining. We've already discussed why the government will want to ban Bitcoin mining. They will say it's bad for the environment. But what could a Bitcoin mining ban look like? Well, we already know, because one city has already banned Bitcoin mining. Plattsburgh, New York, placed an 18-month moratorium on Bitcoin mining in 2018. The argument they used was that Bitcoin mining was making the electricity costs in the city go up for all of its citizens. The moratorium did allow for the current mining operations in Plattsburgh to remain operational, but stopped any new Bitcoin miners from opening up a mining farm. Plattsburgh did eventually realize they were stifling growth and create a way for the mining farms to absorb all the additional electricity costs for the city. They removed the moratorium this year and are now open to new miners. But the important thing here is that we've already seen one city successfully impose a Bitcoin mining ban. Were there possibly small miners that started during this time? Certainly so. But the ban did work to keep commercial mining farms from opening up. The fact is, people like to follow rules. If the government did institute a mining ban, many crypto miners in the United States would simply close up shop and accept the ban. Others, who truly understand the movement behind Bitcoin and decentralization, would probably continue under the risk of fine or arrest. But if miners were to start getting arrested, then many more would go by the wayside. While people getting arrested for mining may sound outlandish, we've seen the government do outlandish things in the past to control our society. A modern example of this would have been downloading pirated music. While many people still pirate music, iTunes has flourished because most people have switched to a paying model. The catalyst for this was in the early 2000s when the US government started bringing federal charges against everyday, normal people who were downloading stolen music. While the idea behind Bitcoin is a revolution, it's very difficult to get people to stand behind that revolution when they could be facing arrest for an activity. The second attack point is the fiat on and off ramps for Bitcoin. If no one could buy Bitcoin or sell their Bitcoin for USD, then that would effectively prevent new people from entering the crypto markets. Of course, your hardline Bitcoiners will say there is no reason for people to ever sell their Bitcoin for USD because one Bitcoin will always equal one Bitcoin. However, new people being stopped from buying Bitcoin in the first place could be a huge problem. The way the government could do this would be through exchanges and banks. We've already seen most exchanges move to mandatory Know Your Customer or KYC procedures. This ensures that every person on their exchange has their identity verified before being able to trade. Of course, decentralized exchanges could be the answer, but even the Ether Delta DEX CEO was charged by the SEC. If decentralized exchange CEOs can be charged with a crime, then that could stifle the whole DEX movement from remaining KYC free. Binance users who completed KYC from the US were recently kicked off the site due to US regulations. The United States is putting pressure on exchanges all over the world to keep US citizens from trading on them because they may include unregistered securities on their list of tradable assets. Binance claims their US exchange will be open by October, but government scrutiny may extend that estimated date by quite a bit. However, Binance has managed to be excellent at hitting their roadmap dates, so maybe they can pay legislators enough hush money to push them through. The other way the government could do this is to work with the banks to make sure that debit or credit card transactions to Bitcoin on and off ramps are blocked. We've already seen this in the UK as customers everywhere were reporting that Santander Bank recently blocked transactions to deposit money onto Coinbase. The bank denied this allegation, but there were reports all over the UK of this occurring. Coinbase also recently had its relationship with Barclays Bank in the UK severed. This meant that customers of Barclays Bank could no longer receive instant withdrawals from Coinbase. This made a lot of people nervous. You may be saying to yourself, this could not actually happen. But we saw the US government and banks work hand in hand during the Black Friday event in the gaming industry. On Friday, April 15th of 2011, online gambling was forced to its knees as the United States closed US citizens' access to online poker sites. The federal government squeezed banks and credit card companies to prevent them from allowing transactions to gambling companies. If the US decided to squeeze banks to prevent people from depositing on Coinbase or Cash App, they have the power and influence to do it. Another interesting route suggested by YouTuber Mr. Christoph is that if the US government decided to promote Bitcoin as a store of value, like gold, they could deem it to be a security. If this happened, the US could regulate Bitcoin mining and trading to death. Listen to what he has to say.
Have any of you ever asked yourself the question, what happens, what happens the day that our government, the United States government primarily, decides to say, you know what, guys, you guys are right. Bitcoin is a store of value. It's not a currency. It's not good enough for a currency. It can't be used as a currency. None of you use it as a currency. You guys use it as a store of value. Therefore, we should definitely regulate it as such. And it being a store of value and Bitcoin being what it is, we are going to have to make it a securities. And the whole mining process, well, guys, check it out. We're going to have to make sure it gets regulated the same way the gold industry does, which means, well, if you're just some little podunk guy who has got their little mining farm, essentially, you are just not good enough. You are not compliant enough. You don't fit within our regulatory guidelines. But we've got these big institutional entities who fit in with these guidelines. So don't worry. They'll take care of it. You guys just sit in the sideline. That's exactly what is going to happen. I'm telling you guys, nobody wants to hear this, but that is exactly what is going to happen with the current narrative of Bitcoin.
So even if the US decides to embrace Bitcoin, they could still push normal investors and miners to the fringes through regulation. So let's be clear here. There's no way to outright ban Bitcoin. It would be like banning someone from typing a bunch of zeros and ones into a text message. However, if the US government, or for that matter, any world government, decided that it absolutely wanted to ban Bitcoin, it would have options to go after people and institutions using Bitcoin. But the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that it cannot be stopped, because Bitcoin is more than just a computer code. It's an idea. And as French poet Victor Hugo said, no force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. And for Bitcoin, the time is now. I hope you enjoyed part 2 of the War on Bitcoin series. If you missed part 1, then please click the link above. Let us know in the comment section if you think the US might go this route. If you haven't done so already, please smash the like button and hit the subscribe button to see more of this type of content.